dot. And because we respect your time, we are going to get started. And I think we can go ahead and start our recording as well. Well, good morning and welcome to the first Trash Free Texas Adopt a Spot training for the Houston-Galveston region. Please note that we will be recording this session and that copies of the recording will be made available after the fact. We'll post it to our YouTube channel and we'll distribute the link to you guys so you can share it with anyone else that you think may be interested in learning more about this very exciting project and opportunity. As I said, we're really excited you're here with us today and we are super ready to dig into content. But before we do, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like you to take note of. All right, I'd like to introduce Andrea Tantillo. She is our virtual moderator and meeting host, and she's going to walk us through some tips and tricks for using Zoom. Andrea?
Hi, good morning, Kathy. Thank you. Like she said, this meeting is being recorded. I just want to make sure you remember that. Also, we're going to ask that you keep your microphones muted and consider turning your cameras off during the presentations so that we can pay attention to the presenter. If you need help with your microphone or camera, you can find it in the lower left-hand corner of your control bar on your Zoom application. Also, we hope you can utilize the chat if you need to talk to each other. If you need to talk to us, if you have a question, please type it in the chat. There's going to be time for questions toward the end of the presentation, but if you have questions, you could go ahead and start putting them in the chat so we'll know about them. Kathy? If you're on your handheld device, the way you access your mic and your camera are pretty much the same way. They're on the lower left-hand corner of your control bar. If you want to reach the chat, there's 3 little dots on the right-hand side. You click on that and a menu comes up that says chat. If you're on your phone and you want to raise your hand to get our attention to ask a question toward the end, you could dial *9 and that will do the raise your hand function. Otherwise, if you need to raise your hand to ask a question, if you don't want to use the chat, you can access that under the participants panel or under the reactions, depending on which version of Zoom you have. And that, I'll turn it back over to Kathy.
Thank you for that, Andrea. As she said, if you have a question at any time, while we don't want to interrupt by unmuting, we do want you to feel free to enter that comment into the chat at any point or raise your hand. And Andrea is keeping track of who is needing to share information. And when the Q&A session opens, she will call on you or read your question and we'll get it going. All right, so our agenda today is pretty straightforward, as you can see here, and the bulk of our time is going to be spent on learning more about what Trash Free Texas's Adopt a Spot program is all about and how you guys can use the tool to become a part of this effort in bettering your community. My name is Kathy Jansen, and I work for the Houston-Galveston Area Council, also known as HGAC, this logo you see on the screen. And for those unfamiliar with HGAC, we are a regional council of governments that work to do a couple of things, specifically promoting efficient and accountable use of local, state, and federal tax dollars. We serve as the problem-solving and information forum for local governments, and we help analyze trends and conditions that affect the region. So we represent 13 counties, 120 plus cities, and we're super glad to have you guys again here today to be a part of this really cool project. On to the meat. Litter, as we all know, is a significant issue for the state of Texas and specifically the Houston-Galveston region. In fact, something like 435 million pieces of visible litter accumulate on roadways each year. It's in our communities, it's the side of the road. I take a walk in our neighborhood park and I see it washed up after we have heavy rain events. It ultimately costs us, not just in the aesthetics and in wildlife costs, but dollars. Litter control efforts cost American taxpayers around $11 billion each year. And when you look at the trash that's in the water, this is typically from a land-based source. In fact, 80% of that trash is blowing in from something like a roadway. So our project here aims to address that issue and encouraging a cleanup culture and supporting you guys in your cleanup projects in your communities. So you'll see some important information here. I won't go through all of it. This is an EPA funded project. We're excited to be working with them on this. It's a pretty broad geography shared between the Houston-Galveston region, HJC service region, and the North Central Texas Council of Governments, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth area, our sort of equivalent up there. And another partner on this is the MEADOWS Center, whom you're going to hear more from here in just a moment. Now, typically, HGAC focuses on its region and NCT COG focuses on their region, and there's not a lot of collaboration in between. And that's really what makes this project unique, in that we are creating a concerted, cohesive program to address litter in myriad ways. Because ultimately, between their region and ours, we represent 50% of the state of Texas's total population. And we're connected through various river basins that ultimately flow down to Galveston Bay and into the Gulf of Mexico. So trash removal from these watersheds, as you guys know, y'all are on the ground, it requires extensive work, commitment. It can be costly to both local governments and nonprofit partners. And we're seeking to help expand that capacity through this program. So you'll see our project goals listed here, and you'll probably learn more about these because we'll send newsletter updates and share information with you guys in the coming weeks, months, years. But what we really want to focus on today is goal number 1, increase adopt-a-spot locations and promote a statewide trash collection database. A quick note on the trash collection database, our friends over at Keep Texas Beautiful and the Houston Advanced Research Center have been hard at work in creating this database, trying to create some unified metrics and units of measure for how we report out trash collection. Is it by volume? Is it by weight? Is it tonnage? What ultimately are we doing to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples? I believe they are estimating a launch of that tool in June of 2021. And as soon as we have that, we're going to share it with you guys because we're hoping we're all singing from the same sheet of music moving forward. But today, we're talking specifically about the first part of Goal 1, increasing adopt-a-spot locations in the Houston-Galveston region. This is a pretty new program for the Houston-Galveston region. In fact, there are only currently 8 adopt-a-spot locations that I'm aware of in our region as of February 9th of this year. And just about all of them are located within the San Jacinto River Basin. Here, it's all in Harris County, as you see on the map. And obviously, our region is so much bigger than that, as reflected by the number of participants we have here today, the number of registrants and folks who've reached out. And we want to see that diversity within the region reflected on our map so that we are accounting for and keeping track of all the good work you guys are already doing or the work you'd like to be doing as we grow the program. So what is Trash Free Texas? Through the Trash Free Texas program, we're ultimately hoping to, again, address litter and create some cohesion amongst our cleanup events here in the region. And I know there are a lot of variations on adopt-a-spots. There's adopt-a-street, adopt-a-highway, there's even adopt-a-drain. And so we're looking at sort of broad categories of land types. Aspen is going to go through the specifics on which types of pieces of property you might adopt to do a cleanup event, but we're just trying to keep that litter from blowing into waterways because ultimately this is a trash-free waters kind of focus. And there are 4 ways that you can become a part of the Adopt-a-Spot program. The first is to become a supporter, and this is where you're helping grow the reach through monetary or in-kind sponsorships. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you on the call today aren't here because you have a big pot of money that you want to give us. If you are, first, my apologies. I didn't mean to overlook you. Let us know. And there are definitely ways you can become involved in that. Where I think it's most likely more relevant for this group is a coordinator. So a coordinator in the Adopt-a-Spot program is someone who's providing data for adoptable and adopted sites. To Trash Free Texas, you're the folks getting the community put on the map. You maintain control over the program management, and then we on our end help connect you with volunteers. And there are a couple of ways to do that. We also look for our coordinators to help collect information from the Adopt a Spot programs, the partners they're working with. So we have public real-time data that we can share. People can be connected to the places where they live through cleanups and feel that sense of purpose and ownership in their own communities. There's a big part for government leaders and Keep Texas Beautiful affiliates as a coordinator. Another very relevant role is that of the partner. Excuse me. These are the folks who are working with volunteers and stakeholders in the community, really promoting Adopt a Spot. They're helping to create that online community where we educate volunteers and really encourage the public to be a part of that environmental change. Oftentimes, the coordinator and partner, these roles are interrelated and it ends up being the same individual, and that's totally okay. Just another facet of how we can work on this program. The final sort of piece to the puzzle, the solution puzzle, is being a volunteer. And these are the folks that are adopting the site, going out there and picking up the trash. This is in some ways the funnest activity, I think, because you go out there and you do the work, you see it on the ground, you feel the satisfaction, and that's a really positive thing. One quick safety note that I would like to address here: any volunteers or volunteer efforts that are coordinated as a part of Adopt a Spot, you know, we live in strange times. COVID-19 is still a pandemic that we're having to consider. So anytime you do have volunteers go out to Adopt a Spot to clean up, we ask that you make it very clear to them that their safety and adherence to federal, state, and local requirements or guidance for safe gatherings are adhered to and addressed. So masking up, keeping our size of our cleanup groups, at least for the time being, you know, family units or smaller numbers, whatever that guidance is. If you have questions about what the requirements or guidance adherence would be, go to your county judge's website, check out the state of Texas's website, or even the CDC for more information. Just had to put the safety first mention out there. Now, as I said, I expect that the vast majority of you here today are interested in being a coordinator. That is, identifying those adoptable sites and then sharing the data on what your volunteers collect. So that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today, walking you through how you identify a site, upload data, and then navigate trashfreetexas.org. And to do that, we have someone much more learned in the upload arts than I. She is a member of a really great group, a team from the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment. Going to help us with all of this. I'd like to turn things over to Aspen Navarro. Aspen, are you with us?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Thank you, Kathy. So like Kathy said, I'm going to be teaching you all how to upload your Adopt a Spot sites to the Trash Free Texas Adopt a Spot map. And I'll go through this a few different ways. I'm going to go through a live demonstration, and then I'm going to circle back to the PowerPoint and just kind of reiterate. Repetition is always good, especially for these steps. So feel free, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat and we'll address them at the end. Next slide. Okay, but first I want to introduce the Meadows Center team. Like Kathy said, we are in an all group on this EPA grant. So it's HGAC, the Meadows Center, and North Central Texas Council of Governments. And so the Meadows Center specifically is a research institute affiliated with Texas State University, for those who aren't familiar with us. And so we have myself, I am the program coordinator working on this project. And then we have our next staff member, if you want to click Kathy, Laura Parchman. She's our GIS and data management associate, helping out with all of the GIS mapping part of this project. And then lastly, we have Jenna Walker, who is our deputy director. All right. So now I'm going to, oh wait, next slide. I had a little agenda in there, but I can skip it if we need to. Okay, here we go, cool. So just 4 key things I'll be going over with y'all today: how to add your Adopt a Spot sites to the statewide map overview, a couple of key points about Adopt a Spot locations, and then lastly, the Adopt a Spot submission process, just kind of showing you overall what it looks like from start to finish to get your sites on the map. Okay, and then so first things first, you're going to go to trashfreetexas.org. And I'm going to now share my screen and I will show you all live how this process is going to look. And then again, I'm going to circle back. All right. Hopefully this looks good. Let me know if I need to zoom in or anything. Okay, so like I said, you're going to go to www.trashfreetexas.org. You can also do / become a coordinator, and it'll take you to the Adopt a Spot submittal form. So once you're on the main homepage, you're just going to scroll down. And like Kathy said, majority of y'all who are on here are going to be coordinators looking to add your spots to the map. So you will click on this coordinator button right here. And it'll take you to our Become a Coordinator page. And then you will scroll down. This just gives you a little bit of information. I'm going to reiterate a few times. And in here, we have the form embedded onto the site. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to fill it out. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. So like Kathy said, sites can be adopt a spots, whether it's rivers, creeks, drains, you name it. There's no limitation on the sites that can be on the map. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm putting in my name, contact email address, and phone number. Keep in mind that your contact information is going to go on the map. So it's really important that whoever contact information you put here will be the main coordinator that anybody volunteers or anybody who's interested in learning more about your sites will need your contact information. And so email contact at trash. Well, that one, there you go. trashfreetexas.org. And it will make sure you put it in correctly. It'll let you know if it didn't go through. Contact phone number 512-245-7376. There we go. Okay. And then your organization, so who you are representing, and I'm just going to put the Meadows Center for these purposes. And then you'll scroll down and you'll come to the section called Adopt a Spots Sites. So here you're going to select this drop down and there's going to be two options for you. So if you have never uploaded sites to the Trash Free Texas program ever, this is your first time doing it, you're going to select new. So again, this should be selected if you've never submitted a form before. You'll select this and it'll give you an option to upload a file, and I'll talk about that here in a second. If you have uploaded sites and let's say you want to make adjustments to the sites that you have already uploaded, whether it be adding a site, changing the status of the, whether it's going to be adopted or maybe now it's available for adoption. If you want to remove sites, then you'll go ahead and you'll submit revised form. Now, keep in mind, if you are selecting the revised form, you will only submit sites that you want to make changes to. And that'll make a little bit more sense whenever I pull up the data template. So once you select the new option, which most of you will be doing the new option, you'll have an option to upload a file. So this file is going to be a data template, which is embedded right here. So you'll just click data template, it'll download, and I already have one up for y'all. I'm just going to show y'all what this looks like. So here's the data template that we have embedded. So this is where you will populate all your Adopt a Spot locations, and then you'll upload it to that form online. So just for example purposes, I'm going to go through how to fill this out, and I'll just do a site at the Meadows Center. So I said Spring Lake Headwaters. So it's really important to note for your location name to give some type of name that gives it a an idea of where geographically your site is. So whether it be at a park, along a major highway, just some geographic context, not only for you, but also for the volunteer. And then you'll add in the latitude and longitude. Very important that this be in decimal degrees. If you don't know what decimal degrees is or don't know how to get it, just have a quick example here. If you just go to Google Maps, click anywhere on Google Maps, this little icon will pop up and decimal degrees will be right here. So you can just right click, copy, bring it back over here, pop that bad boy in, and then there you go. Now, adoption status, this will be if it's available for adoption, you are looking to have somebody adopt the site. If it's already adopted, it's it's taken, it's not available to be adopted. Contact for status, this usually is if maybe it's currently adopted, but it's soon going to be available. Some people will notate it as contact for status, or remove. And again, if you're doing the revised form, you will only put sites that you want to make edits to. So if you want to remove any sites, you'll just click remove this site. And that indicates for us, when we get that your form has been submitted, it'll come over to us. We'll notate you said remove, so we'll go through and we'll remove the site from the map. But for purposes, since most of y'all are going to be using this for the first time, I will say it is, or let's do available. Available for adoption and adopted by. So this will be who's adopting it, whether it's an organization, group. So I will put, just for example purposes, I will put Hayes County Master Naturalist. And then you'll just continue on. Again, you can have as many sites as you want. It doesn't have to be, just adopt a spots. It can be adopt a street, adopt a creek, whatever it may be. And you'll just do this again and again until you have everything done. You'll save it, and then you'll go through and you'll just select the file and upload the file that way. And then once you're done, you'll hit submit, and that'll go over to us at contact@trashfreetexas.org. And then what I want to do, since I am on the website, is I want to take you through the actual map and just show you what it looks like and show you how your entry in the data template and the adopt a spot data submittal form will then convert over to our map. So here is the Trash Free Texas dashboard. As you can see, we have sites in Austin, Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth area, Midland, Waco, and we have a few in Corpus that need to be updated, but looking to grow this statewide, as Kathy had mentioned. So just for example purposes, I want to show y'all what these sites look like. So on the right here, we have our legend. So you can see if it's purple, that means it's adopted. We got a purple site right here. If it's green or teal, we have available. So we have some available sites here. And again, if it's gray, contact for status. We also have the map delineated by major river basins. And if you click on it, a hyperlink will show up to tell you what river basin we are in. So just zooming in here. So clicking on this site, the site ID you don't have to worry about, we will assign that, but it'll tell you the location name, which is what you fill out in the data template, the latitude and longitude. And this is really useful too for your volunteers. That way they can just plug these in and take them right to the site if they've never been there before, if it's their first time. The organization, which is going to be you, who is the main lead on that site specifically. The contact person, so this will be the coordinator, their email, phone number. If it's the adopted status, whether it's adopted, available, or contact for status, and then who's adopting it. So here we have Friends of Woodland Park. And then we do have, I just want to kind of take y'all through all the bells and whistles of the data map, or of the Trash Free Texas map. So we have a drop down here. You can also see the legend again. We have a few different base map options if you just want to kind of go through and look at it at different base maps. And then we'll change it back because that one's not very good to see. Okay. And then lastly, we have just kind of a little tidbit reiterating a few things that I said, how to navigate the site. This is super helpful too. If you have volunteers, it'll just kind of give them a little bit of information on how to go through and see the information. And then if you click on this, it'll actually take you back to the adopt a spot data submittal form. Okay, and then what I want to do is I'm going to bring it back to you, Kathy, to share the PowerPoint again, and I'll roll through that way.
Can you see it now, Aspen?
Yes.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Shall you tell me when to progress?
Yes, go for it. Okay, so again, I'm just wanted to give y'all a whole nother run through via PowerPoint, kind of hit on some key things. So the adopt a spot data submittal form, again, is on the Become a Coordinator page. It is where you will add your sites to the map. Only one form needs to be filled out for one or more sites. And then the contact name on the form should be the individual who volunteers can contact if they want to adopt a site, have questions about your sites in the area, etc. And your contact information will be made public on the Trash Free Texas map. So you'll fill out the form, providing your name, email, phone number, and organization. All right, Next slide. So scrolling down on the form, you'll get to the Adopt-a-Spot sites section, like I had mentioned before. This is where you will upload your data. And first you will select from the dropdown whether you're submitting a new or revised form. So again, new should be selected if you've never submitted a form before, and therefore will only be selected the first time you ever submit Adopt-a-Spot sites. The revised form will be selected if you wish to add, remove, or update your Adopt-a-Spot sites. The revised form should always be selected if you've already submitted a form previously. So if you submitted a revised form moving forward, or a new form moving forward, you will always submit a revised form. And once you select the appropriate dropdown, you will download the embedded data template to upload within the form. And we'll go over the data template in the next slide. Okay, and again, just reiterating everything, the data template is embedded within the Adopt-a-Spot data submittal form. The data template outlines the data that we need from you to populate the map with your Adopt-a-Spot sites. So there are specific instructions for each column. I already went through this, but again, just for repetition, the location name, try to give geographic context within the name, such as a major water body or a road, etc. Location coordinates, provide the latitude and the longitude in decimal degrees. This can be identified again using Google Maps. The adoption status, mark whether the site is available for adoption, adopted, contact for status, or if you would like us to remove the site. And then please note, remove will indicate that we will remove it on our end and it'll completely be wiped from the map. And then lastly, the adopted by column this is the group or organization who's currently adopting the site. So if you've never submitted a form before, you will populate all of your sites onto the data template, so we may upload it to the map. Over time, as adoption statuses change, new sites are added or removed, this is where you will submit the revised form option. With the revised form, only the sites that need to be updated, added, or removed should be filled out on the data template. And then sites that have no updates to them should not be submitted when you're submitting a revised form. Always double check the information populated on the data map or on the data template, making sure no misspellings or anything like that. And then we'll also do a check on our end just to make sure everything looks good before we upload it to the map. All right, next slide. Okay, so once you upload the completed data template to the Adopt-a-Spot data submittal form, you go ahead and you click submit, and that shoots it right on over to the Trash Free Texas team. And then again, we'll do a QC of the sites. We'll let you know when it's popped in and everything is good. That way you can also do a check once it's live on the map. All right, next slide. And we can go ahead and skip this next one since we already went over the map. Okay, so just a few key points I want y'all to keep in mind. Anyone wishing to establish cleanup efforts in their region can be a coordinator. Coordinators are often local government officials, but it's not limited by any means. Anybody who is just looking to have cleanup efforts in their region. As Kathy mentioned, this grant is specific to the Houston-Galveston and DFW area region. But that being said, this is a statewide program and we're looking to populate all over the state of Texas. All right, go ahead and click, Kathy. So coordinators serve as the main contact for the Adopt-a-Spot sites on the statewide map. So as volunteers use the map as a resource, the coordinator and their contact information is listed on each Adopt-a-Spot site. So volunteers can contact the coordinator directly to adopt the site for any of the sites. That way they can go ahead and get involved, or if they have any more information as well that they need from you, go ahead and click. So it is up to coordinator to decide which sites in the region should be added to the map. However, we ask that coordinators take a few things into consideration, such as the site safety, such as parking. Want to make sure that they're able to safely access the site, able to get to it safely, don't have to worry about a busy road or anything like that. That it's also accessible, and keep in mind too, private property as well. So the coordinator sets up their own rules for cleanup events, such as if equipment will be provided, how often the site should be cleaned up, if any metrics need to be reported or any forms need to be filled out for liability, things like that. Go ahead and click. And it's up to the coordinator to notify Trash Free Texas of any site updates via the Adopt-a-Spot data submittal form. So sites can be creeks, roads, highways, etc. Like I said before, there's no limit on what sites or how many can be added to the statewide map. And there's no limit on how many sites, like I said, can be added. So feel free, we will take anything. Okay, so to wrap things up, I just want to show you the flow of the AdoptSpot data submittal process. So you'll fill out your AdoptSpot data submittal forms, you'll populate your sites on the form, and then from there it'll go to the Trash Free Texas team to review the sites. And then from there, sites get published onto the map. And then lastly, the Trash Free Texas team will notify the coordinator directly of when those sites are live. That way you can check them as well and make sure everything looks good on your end. We also have a few cities who are also taking the map and embedding it within their website as well. Okay, and here's my contact information. Go ahead and you can either reach out to us via email or phone number, but I will be staying on too for the whole webinar. So feel free to add in any questions in the chat as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aspen. I'm going to stick around with you as well, because now it's really time for us to stop talking and for you guys to ask any questions that you may have. As we said earlier, you can post it into the chat. You can also raise your hand using the instructions that Andrea had mentioned earlier, and either our virtual moderator, Andrea, will call on you if you so wish, or we'll read your question from the chat. So I'm going to give you a second to type in questions that you may have. But in the meantime, Aspen, I have a question.
Go for it.
What do you guys consider to be a benefit to these sites, places, folks that are already doing cleanups? What's a benefit to them in becoming a coordinator or a partner in Adopt a Spot?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've had a lot of people who are utilizing the statewide map. Like I said, they're actually taking this map and embedding it into their Keep Beautiful chapter, their KTV chapter. And that way they can show physically their volunteers, hey, this is how many sites we have available. Here is a plethora of different areas. Some people like to, adopt a spot, places that they feel connection to, whether it's they're in their backyard or their local river. So it's a great resource for tracking purposes for not only the coordinator, but also the volunteer.
Excellent.
And then metrics too, right? Having data is beneficial for grants, also being able to see, what the program has grown into, what maybe some areas need some help, things like that.
Excellent. Andrea, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, we're starting to get some questions in the chat. I'll just read them in order. So the first is, how would you determine what would be a spot?
Yeah, so again, we have no limitations, right, on how many spots or what the spot is. I will say a few tips, because a lot of cities have established areas, whether it be some sub-watersheds within a major watershed, really hitting on the areas that, again, are safe to access. They're easy to, to access as well. And then private property is another thing too. If you do want to access private property, obviously make sure you get permission from the property owner, but really looking at areas where you have a buildup of trash. It's a problem. You're able to, if you want to look at maybe having a bigger group, or if you're part of an organization that has a big amount of volunteers, maybe looking at an area that has enough parking to accommodate that. But yeah, really letting y'all are on the ground. You're going to know those problem areas that are within your city, and just keeping those few things in mind too, to make sure it's safe to access.
Excellent. I will add too, Adam, to your point, that's a great question. Everything that Aspen just said is absolutely correct. One of the things that we're going to put together in the coming days is a best practices guide for our coordinators, which will include a list of considerations you might take into account when identifying a site. It's by no means a requirement, but rather a best practice. Here are ways for you to protect your interests and do it efficiently. So we hope to have a tool for you to be more efficient in that in the future.
And our next question is about permissions, and you may have touched on this when you talked about private property, but do coordinators need permissions from local regulatory government agency to adopt a spot?
Good question. So I know I'm speaking local here for the city of San Marcos. So the city of San Marcos KTV chapter is actually within the city. And so they didn't have to get, because they are local government. But that being said, I know some parks may have reservation kind of system. So really, I would reach out to your city directly and see if they do have any. I don't think they would have any trouble with having volunteers want to go out and help clean up the city, but definitely making sure that on all accounts, everybody's in the loop and they're okay with it. And if anybody has any experience too in their area with needing to get any approval, feel free to um, put any comments in the chat on that too. Any tips that you have is helpful for anybody on here.
Thank you. The next question is a little more clarification. It was regarding the expected frequency of cleanups and data. It sounds like that there's no specific requirements for that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, Kelly. No specific requirements. We are leaving it entirely up to the coordinator directly. If they want to set a minimum amount of, adopt a spot cleanups that are held within the site, I know speaking for the city of San Marcos specifically, they would have 6 before they could install a plaque. So once the group has 6 cleanups for that site, they put a cute little sign that says that this site is adopted by this certain organization. So it's completely up to y'all, and that is what I think is really cool about this program is it's flexible. We understand that y'all know your bandwidth better than we do, so feel free however much or little you want to do. No requirements.
Thank you. The next question is, can you discuss and explain the process of reporting pickup efforts, such as how much by weight or your preferred measure?
Yeah, so Tom, right now, again, this is something that we're leaving entirely up to coordinators. So some Adopt a Spot programs do have a way of tracking metrics. Maybe some of them haven't done it yet, but they're working towards that. So we don't have any type of monitoring form or anything like that because a lot of programs have something already developed. And Kathy, if you want to talk a little bit more too, I know we've kind of gone all around with the metrics too.
Sure. It's a really important question that you're asking, Tom, and I wish I had a more definitive answer at this moment, but I do feel confident that we're working towards it. So Adopt a Spot is something that's existed prior to this project. Aspen and her team have been working on this for a long time. And as she said, there aren't a lot of requirements or specifics sort of burdening the coordinator at this point. You have a lot of autonomy, how you want to report and the unit of measure and all that. However, as we alluded to earlier in the presentation, we are working with Keep Texas Beautiful and the Houston Advanced Research Center to have a statewide database that's going to be, we're going to link it up with, correct me if I'm wrong, Aspen, but it's going to ultimately be something we can funnel information in through Trash Free Texas Adopt a Spot that will have specifics on whether we're measuring by weight or volume or estimating by number of bags and all of that. It feels a bit cart before the horse because we don't have that database in place, but we expect it to launch in June. And that may change some of how we're reporting. It's an evolving process. I hope that answers your question. More to come on that.
Yeah, and I want to elaborate a little bit too on that, Kathy. Like Kathy said, it's something that's in the works, hope to launch by June. That way we can have a statewide database of all of trash cleanup efforts that currently does not exist, and we're working to get it to that point. But I do know that KTB and HARC are working on having included in there all types of metrics. So you're not limited to just, like pounds. You'll have bags, pounds, all of that. They're trying to include everything because they realize that people have different equipment to do all of that measuring, but then also they already have their own system too. So want to make sure it's not a burden, like Kathy said, as much as possible, a seamless integration process.
Excellent clarification. Thank you. And thank you for your question, Tom.
Yeah, it's like a follow-up to this is, do you have a place to log data that's already collected?
Yeah, so I think we just answered it, but I'll just reiterate. Currently, no. Any collection that you do right now stays in your system, but we do plan on hopefully launching the database by June. Hopefully, databases they're fun work, but it'll be great once we have it launched. KTB and HARC, like Kathy said, are working on that. So currently no way to integrate any data, but once we get it launched, it will be connected to the Trash Free Texas website and map.
And then hopefully we can have some historic information put into place as well.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent question, Robin. Thank you.
And if I ask a question that's already been answered, that's fine to answer it again. So every question gets to be asked. So that's
yes,
fantastic.
Definitely.
So we have a couple of questions here. So what if there are no spots in my area? Can I ask local agencies and businesses if they are interested in Adopt a Spot?
Yes, good question, Mary. Absolutely. If there, you might think that there aren't, and sometimes there might be some local groups who even do, like biannual cleanups in certain areas. So definitely reaching out and seeing if there's any organizations that may already have efforts that you don't know about, or if they're willing to get involved and help promote the Adopt a Spot program that you have. Definitely.
Thank you. If someone adopts a stream segment, do they put a single coordinate? Is the assumption that you will do both sides of the stream and the area along the stream affected by flooding if possible?
Good question, Jim. Something that we get a lot too. So yes, when you go and enter your data into the data template that's embedded on the Adopt a Spot data submittal form, you will put a single point. However, when you are connecting with your volunteer, you can let them know that it's going to be a certain segment. So if it's a park and it's a whole, if there's like a river and a park, you can say within the park, you do the whole river or whatever it may be. It is something that we're looking into, hopefully getting one day, not just points, but also lines and polygons. That is something in the future, but for now, single points is perfect. Good question.
Single points makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So we have another question is, we have several locations that are currently adopted in one park. Do these areas qualify?
Yes. If anything's adopted or if it's available for adoption, absolutely. We will take it all. Good question.
Okay, Robin Kendrick Yates has a question about adopt a waterway sign in her local waterway. Do you want to unmute and ask that question?
Yes, I'm Robin and I'm a he.
Oops, my apologies.
Not a problem. That's a very common assumption. Not a problem at all. Yes, I've got a question. I've got a waterway that I'm considering adopting, Horsepen Bayou, that goes into Armand Bayou, then Clear Lake, then the Galveston Bay. Currently, there's a sign that says adopt a waterway, and it says maintained by United Space Alliance Leadership Association, the Green Team, and Boy Scout Troop 869. I have been watching for 10 years. I've never seen another body besides myself and my crew, P3 Bayou crew, actually addressing the debris in this waterway. Can you help me out with what is this going on with this waterway adopting sign?
To be perfectly frank, no, I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but as a point of curiosity, Robin, have you been able to reach out to Boy Scout Troop 869? Or have you heard it? Have you ever spoken to them directly? I know you've never seen them out cleaning.
No, I have not.
Well, that would be where I would start. Just to get a feel for whether or not that's even something they're still interested in. There may be an opportunity for y'all to collaborate. If that's an outdated sign, you might see who they went through. I hate to put all the burden of proof on you, but
that's okay. I'm used to it.
Well, hopefully we can alleviate some burden down the line and create some infrastructure for you. But I would start there and make sure it's not just some legacy signage. Boy Scout troops are usually, you can get all the information for the Sam Houston Council. Boy Scouts are online. I can paste that link to the Sam Houston Council sort of unifying body in the chat. And I bet you can drill down and get some contact info that way.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate everything y'all are doing.
Absolutely. So glad you're here today.
Thanks.
And the next two questions are more about collaboration and getting some information from other sources. And the first is, when creating best practices guide, we may want to look at the text.adopt a highway system and look at their safety tips. Thank you. And the next is that Robin, and I think that may be the Robin we just heard from, may have some ideas on reporting and collecting such data, as he has headed up P3 for a couple of years and collected such along the way. And another question is, does the website allow feedback from the community to the adopting group?
Currently, no. We do have a quick little contact us sheet if you want to provide any, but we don't have anything specifically to provide feedback. That is a really good point, though, something that we will definitely consider.
I did receive a direct question in the chat, Andrea, direct message, and it was a question about how you upload data once you collect it. How do you report the results of a collection event? And just to reiterate something that Aspen said earlier, you upload that data using the data submittal form on the trashfreetexas.org website. And I should note that since we recorded this presentation, this entire thing today, we'll send that out via our YouTube link. So if there's something that you didn't feel like we went too fast or you'd like to drill down, you can look at that video and it'll walk you through how to do it. I don't want to step on your toes, Aspen. I just wanted to slip that one in there.
No, I'm glad that you remembered to say that we were going to upload this. I'm going to also put it on the Trash Free Texas website as well. So we'll have it in multiple locations for everybody to be able to go back and reference.
So Kathy, could you please post that, I think the list on or the link on here for the Adopt a Spot, please? Well, a bunch of questions are coming in. Okay, so please elaborate on the advantages of connecting with Trash Free Texas versus an independent effort.
Yeah, so kind of going back, Trash Free Texas is a statewide organization. And so what we're really looking at to do is not only have a one-stop shop where all of the sites that are in the state of Texas that are being cleaned up are in one area, but also, again, having metrics behind it once we get that database launched in June. So it'll be something that the database is going to be accessible for all of the coordinators. We're hoping to have the public data source kind of somewhere in there as well. You know, having documentation to see what the state of Texas is looking like. Historically, today, are we getting better with our trash mitigation efforts? What are some problem areas that maybe we need to have more focus on? There's currently not a one-stop system to show how much the state of Texas is putting behind volunteers, but also, you know, monetary value as well. So again, having that one-stop central location, and then for coordinators to be able to have that area to have a map showing where all of their sites are, being able to, you know, have an idea of how much is adopted or what needs to be adopted within their region as well.
That is all true, and I agree. To speak more specifically to a direct benefit, Richard, I think, as Aspen was just saying, there's obviously the map. So anybody who hears of Adopt a Spot and says, hey, I want to clean something up, it's just one more way for you to promote your cleanup location. It's not just on your website or just on your Facebook, but it's on a statewide map, and people can access that information. There's also the potential for additional marketing. So there are some marketing materials associated with Trash Free Texas, some of it more accessible than others, but it's an established brand that helps you brand beyond just your location, but into something larger and more cohesive. But you're right. It's important that we explore what the benefits are to y'all, because yeah, we want more data, but what's in it for you? Hopefully that brand identification is a big plus.
The next question is about funding. What grants in the past have groups received so we might go after some grants?
I know for at least here at Meadows, we've really hit on the EPA Trash Free Waters grant. Kathy, I don't know if y'all have any in mind in that area too specifically, but, and Laura, I know you're on, I think you're still on too. I don't know, Laura has been here longer than I have. So if you have any tips too, Laura, feel free to shout them out.
Yeah, I'm not involved with the money aspect, so I'm not going to be any help there.
I'll say this,
My
Mac.
numbers are decimal degrees.
I'll say this, Mac. It really depends on the type of entity that's looking, right? So yes, the United States EPA Trash Free Waters grant program is something that's accessible to certain groups. Obviously, that's funding this project. That's something Aspen and the group over at the Meadows Center has accessed. If you are a smaller organization looking for funding, I don't have a comprehensive list of who you might reach out to with this data to support your case, but I would encourage you to look at private endowments and local giving. There are any number of conservation organizations, endowments, and others in the Houston-Galveston region that are willing to partner. I would also encourage you, if there's any industry in your area, to look at their corporate givings. I know that especially in Brazoria County, in the east end of Harris County, you know, these are industrial hubs, and these organizations, they're ultimately made up by people that live, work, and play in this region. And they usually have a corporate giving arm and will sometimes sponsor cleanup events. So I would encourage you to look at corporate giving for private companies, organizations, and industry, and look to endowments in the region. Beyond that, I can't give anything too specific, but I appreciate your question.
I also know any Lions Club chapters too often have grant programs, and they love seeing efforts like this too. So that's another one.
Okay, the next question is, will the Adopt a Spot team request data from TxDOT on their existing Adopt a Highway segments, or would TxDOT need to input each of the existing locations manually?
So that's a really good question, Andrew. So we have reached out to TxDOT before. I haven't specifically. We kind of have a committee with the Trash Free Texas team, and one of our committee members has been in contact with TxDOT. I'm not sure what has transpired from that. Once we were in coordinating mode with them, COVID hit and things kind of got a little crazy. But we are definitely still willing to take their sites. I do know that so a lot of programs already have maybe a GIS system where they're working on adding their sites to, but they don't have it publicly accessible or in the platform that we do. So we can definitely take in, if you already have an existing shapefile, a GIS shapefile, we will definitely take those as well. You don't have to submit it through the Adopt a Spot data submittal form. However, we do ask, if you can, just clean it up to where the attributes follow the data template. So we have all of that information that we can then go ahead and populate on the map, and it follows the same system.
Thank you. Can a small flower garden spot be considered, or do you think it's better to have larger areas?
I think, I mean, again, not limited by any means. Obviously, a larger area is nice, but if you also have a smaller group, then a smaller area, you know, is totally fine. No limits by any means, especially if it's an area that you know is a problem area and builds up a lot of trash as well.
Thank you. We have a follow-up question on the benefits from earlier. Can you share what specific data the database intends to collect?
You want me to tackle this, Aspen, or?
Okay, I'm gonna tackle it on the top of my head because it's still in development mode. But again, going back to, obviously it's going to be the date, who the coordinator is, their contact information, how many volunteers is what we're looking at too, the metrics as far as pounds, bags, things like that. We have been talking about types of trash. And so being able to record, because I know some cleanup efforts are specific to maybe only plastic bags, or unfortunately masks, which we've seen a lot of because of COVID. And those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Feel free to elaborate a little bit more if I missed anything, Kathy.
No, I think that was really comprehensive. The statewide database is ultimately collecting a little bit of everything so that we have comparable information. And that's really the key there, understanding the scale and scope of the project, or the problem, I should say, in a concerted way.
Yeah, and all of that will be tied to the Adopt a Spot site specifically, so those coordinates specifically. And feel free, if anybody on here has any suggestions, again, this is still being developed, so if there's something that you want to, you know, just really accentuate that would be very useful for you and something that you would utilize, feel free to put in some ideas and suggestions for us in the chat too.
Absolutely.
Photos,
I don't know if anyone yes. I don't know if anyone from HARC is on. You're welcome to jump in and make sure we are not misrepresenting your baby.
Yes. And Robin had said photos too. That is something we talked about as well, being able to upload photos, which surprisingly is very tricky in a database, but it's something that we're definitely considering and trying to figure out if we can do it, or maybe having another way that photos can be uploaded, but definitely something we've talked about. Good point, Robin.
Excellent. Well, I think we're winding down here. Andrea, do we have any more questions before I close us out?
I
Just
don't
a
see any more questions in the chat. Oh, Jessica,
just
has
a follow
her
up on
hand up.
my statement. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
About the photos. The reason the photo is helpful is if you change your criteria, you can later look back at it and then make decisions on what you're determining.
Definitely. And another thing that we had said too with photos is being able to use them too for y'all to have a way to store photos and tie them to your sites, but also being able to use those for, any grant applications that you apply to too. Promotional, like Kathy said, doing some PR and marketing as well. It's good to have those.
So Kathy, we have a handful more questions, and also Jessica had her hand up, but do we want to move on and
we'll try to tackle them quickly, and I will go through the final slides, but we are going to go ahead and put a moratorium on any more being submitted. Don't worry, the conversation doesn't end here. We'll give you contact information to follow up. Sorry, so go ahead, Andrea.
Jesse, did you want to unmute?
Sure. Okay. Just a real quick technical question. So it doesn't seem, so since this is a group more focused on coordinating, the coordinator itself, for update contact information, is that just a simple email? Because it doesn't seem like that's going to be a data submittal revision type thing.
Good question, Jesse. Yes, a simple email is totally fine. But if also, say a new coordinator comes in and is taking over, and while they have also new sites to submit or maybe updates, they can always put their contact information on the DAPSpot data submittal form, and then just go ahead and upload the sites. And then that'll indicate to us too that this is a new coordinator, and can notate it too in the data template as well. Either one will suffice.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, one question is, our city does 2 citywide cleanup events twice a year as part of Keep Texas Beautiful. Would this be something to track under the database coming up in June, or 2 separate systems?
I would say yes. Kathy, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, if they're consistently being, cleaned up, those are specific areas and sites that are a problem. There are cleanups, whether it's annually or biannually, because cleanup events, you could have like 700 plus volunteers, and that could be a really big, metrics that are reported. I would say yes. Kathy, what do you think?
At this point, yes, because there's not integration, but I think down the line there will be integration, so we won't be looking at doubling the work. One is where you adopt, one is where we would track. At this point, we want it all. Don't want to be greedy, but man, we don't want to lose any of the hard work or the good stuff you guys have going on. I hope to have a better answer for you in terms of how Adopt-a-Spot's upload and the statewide database will be integrated at future meetings, but I'm going to make a note, Adam, to contact you when I have an answer.
Okay, the next question was just asking for a contact number for Aspen, and we will provide that. Next, tires are a big problem in our area, and it would be interesting to see other areas. And another note, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
So the Literati app allows pictures, so that might be something to look at for modeling. And also photos of the launch site when on a waterway.
Excellent.
Yes, that's a good point.
Well, I would like to thank you, Aspen, for walking us through the tool, answering the questions, and really providing sort of a broader understanding of what Adopt-a-Spot is and how we can integrate into it. Again, don't worry, guys, if you have more questions. I want to honor your time. We have 2 minutes left. I want to honor your time, but also, gosh, if you have more questions, don't hesitate to email, call, reach out, and we're going to provide that contact information here in a moment. I'm going to very quickly go through some additional available resources and data, just because I think it might be useful to you guys as we move forward. As I said, HJC is developing a best practices guide for Adopt-a-Spot coordinators. It's not aimed at removing autonomy for coordinators, but rather creating some sideboards so that we can be more meaningful, intentional in what we're doing, and you feel like you're set up for success with whatever sort of supporting information you need as you get started. It'll include an FAQ. We'll talk talk about optimal site identification and location. So again, the safety and some of the other things that Aspen mentioned earlier, because we want you to feel confident as you embark on becoming an Adopt-a-Spot coordinator. There were also a series of surveys that we conducted across the region and beyond over the past year. One was a statewide organized litter cleanup survey. Many of you probably received it. I apologize for sending you so many emails. I promise I'm going to try to limit those via our newsletter in the future. So that monthly project digest you see here, we're anticipating starting to send that out mid-March. That's going to include all kinds of juicy tidbits. The link to this video recording of the training, information from those two surveys, both the one that went across the state to cities and Keep Texas Beautiful affiliates, as well as the survey we sent out to other councils of government, gauging attitudes, behaviors, and sort of tolerance for different things. All kinds of good stuff. Future training's going to be living in that newsletter, and you should be on the lookout for that. We've talked a lot about the launch of that statewide litter database in June. More information coming on that. And again, Adam, I am going to circle back with you once we know more about integration. We're also going to be developing a local government engagement toolkit that goes beyond just Adopt-a-Spot, but how you can be a broader Trash-Free Texas partner. And that's going to include some ideas for working with restaurants in your communities to help them reduce the use of single-use plastics and litter. All right, we covered so much today. I appreciate your time and your enthusiasm, consideration. I hope to see all of you as Adopt-a-Spot partners in the future. Contact information is listed here. I'm also going to post some of this in the chat just so it's readily available to you, because we want to make sure that you have what you need. Again, we'll also be sending out the video link and that contact info via email. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you for your time. I hope you're all recovering well from Snowmageddon last week, and we look forward to seeing you on the trails cleaning up soon. Thank you.